Admiral Vors stood at the heart of Imperial Fleet Command's bridge, eyes fixed on the holographic map floating above the tactical dais. He did not blink. None of them did. Around him, decorated officers and analysts murmured in hushed tones, as though a raised voice might somehow draw the unknown vessel's attention. "Range?" he asked, his voice taut. 62,000 clicks from the central perimeter. The sensor officer answered, antennae twitching in unease. "But closing rapidly, sir." "It shows no sign of slowing." Vors pivoted toward the technician. "You mean it's advancing at interstellar velocity without engaging deceleration protocols? No braking, no transmission, no identifier, no point of origin," the reply came. "It simply appeared." The Admiral felt his throat go dry. That should have been impossible. Every vessel in the known galaxy carried an encoded signature from launch. Imperial law demanded it. Even pirates had the sense to mask or falsify signals when they wished. To slip unseen. But this ship carried nothing. No deception, no mask. Just emptiness, as though the stars themselves bent away from its presence, refusing to give it a name. "Visual?" Vors asked. The screen came alive and silence drowned the bridge. The image revealed something sleek, not with the ostentatious ornament of Imperial craft, but with the brutal elegance of a design forged for a single purpose. Its hull was pure black, so deep it seemed to consume light itself. Looking at it almost hurt. It slid through the void with an ease that defied physics, as though subspace yielded to it, out of deference. Or terror. It's human. Someone. Breath. The word seemed to freeze the air. Human. Terran. The phantoms of the Orion conflict. The species all believed erased. They had vanished a century ago, after the war, after the slaughter at Jara, after the Empire seared Earth's skies and poisoned her colonies, claiming triumph over those who dared defy them. Official archives recorded the last Terran vessels. Self-destruction to avoid capture. That was 100 years past. And now, this. Vors slowly turned toward his communications officer. Vors faced his communications officer. Any reply across all frequencies? No response. But, the officer's face had paled, rare for their green-skinned kind. "Sir, it is transmitting, just not in our tongue. It's speaking Terran Standard." The bridge froze. "Translate." "It." A heavy pause followed before a mechanical voice bled into the chamber, cold and merciless. "You erased us. You silenced our children. Now we remember. Now we return. Every being aboard felt it, that crawling shiver up the spine, the dreadful certainty that the universe had just grown darker. This was no threat. It was a declaration. Vors gripped the console. Scrambled defense wings. "Raise planetary shields. Notify the High Council." Another voice cut in, overriding their encrypted channels with ease. This one was human again, but raw, furious, unmistakably alive. "This is the SV Vengeance. No further warnings. Stand down, or be dismantled." The transmission severed. Silence suffocated the room until the sensor officer rasped, "It's accelerating." Panic rippled. Vors's chest tightened. No ship should reach those velocities, certainly not this near to a core system. Yet it shattered every known law of SPAC EFLIGHT. A junior analyst cried out. It bypassed the perimeter cannons. "Sir, the batteries didn't fire." "What?" Vors barked. "The AI refuses to engage. They claim it isn't an identified foe. They say the vessel doesn't exist. They can't target it." Vors's gaze locked on the screen. The phantom ship loomed. A single jump from Corvallis Prime, the Empire's jewel, their throne world. The weight of it pressed down on him, crushing. "They're back," he whispered. "The Terrans are back." Then came the alarms blaring across the orbital defense ring, shrieking through steel corridors and stone halls. 1,000 sirens rose in unison, heralding the unthinkable. The breach had begun. Officers rushed to battle posts, fleet drones flared crimson, and civilians blissfully unaware moments earlier now gazed upward as planetary shields shimmered into view. Deep within the High Council's panic chamber, Chancellor Mew slammed her fist into the throne's armrest. One Terran ship, and you claim it has bypassed 5 fleets, 3 defense rings, and the entire perimeter in under 2 hours? General. Talik, a scarred brute draped in metals, lowered his head. Chancellor, we don't know how. Our AI fire control won't even acknowledge it as a target. It's invisible. Technically, it doesn't exist. And yet, she snapped, it very clearly does. He had no answer. What could he say that the Empire, with all its centuries of supremacy, was facing an enemy it couldn't even comprehend? An advisor, pale and shaking, spoke up from behind a datapad. Ma'am, there's more. A transmission just arrived from the deep archive vault. It didn't originate from the Terran vessel, but it triggered the moment it entered. System range, Mew's eyes narrowed. Deep archive? Those aren't even connected. I know, the advisor whispered. But this one, it held a Terran backdoor. We think it was buried during the Jara conflict dormant for 98 years. Her voice hardened. And what did it say? The man hesitated. It's an audio file. A human captain roar. The chamber froze. Mew leaned back, stunned. The name was Legenda Butcher in Imperial records, a Terran commander who orchestrated brutal raids across the frontier. Officially, he died at Jara. Another ghost. Play it, she ordered. Static. Filled the chamber, then a human voice, low, steady, unforgiving. To the Empire, you taught us mercy was weakness. You taught us silence meant safety. You burned our skies, buried our cities. We are what you made us. A pause. This message is for the one who pressed the button. Chancellor Mew of the Val Ascendancy. We remember your face. All eyes turned to her. For just a moment, her mouth trembled. She had been young then, an officer who authorized the final radiance bomb over Earth's skies. She had convinced herself it was necessary, that the Terrans would have destroyed them otherwise. I was following orders, she whispered. General Talik met her gaze. He doesn't care. Suddenly, every light blazed crimson. A mechanical voice sliced through comms. Core defense grid compromised. Sector 0 breached. Outer shields offline. Unauthorized landing upper spire deck. Talik roared. What? How? An officer stumbled in, gasping. Ma'am, something's on the surface. The Terran ship dropped something. Small, compact. It tore through the atmosphere without tripping sensors. We only caught it now. Where? Mew demanded. Upper spire, it's moving. Walking? She echoed. Not alive, Chancellor. A machine or a suit? A Terran drop construct. Fully autonomous. It looks ancient. But it's cutting through Imperial Guard like nothing. Live feeds flickered on. At first only distortion, then clarity. A black figure, humanoid, nearly 9 feet tall. Armor jagged, scorched. It moved with relentless precision. Every camera it passed blinked out seconds later, on its chest. 2 faded letters still glowed through the scars. V. The ship's name, Mew whispered. SV Vengeance. Then the figure stopped mid-corridor and turned, staring directly into the nearest lens. A new voice came through, not broadcast but aimed. Chancellor Mew, you buried my family. I've come to return the favor. The feed went dead. For the first time in half a century, the Empire remembered the taste of fear. Emergency lights pulsed red, slow and heavy, like a heartbeat. Each flare revealed wreckage, soldiers vaporized, bodies in shattered armor strewn like broken toys. Metal scraped marble as the Terran construct advanced, step by deliberate step. It was no rush. Death didn't hurry. Chancellor Mew had been moved to the inner vault, Corvallis Prime's most fortified refuge, 10 meters of neutronium plating. Its own power grid, defenses untouched for 6 centuries. Yet she felt no safety. General Talek manned the primary interface, voice sharp with strain. Seal every shaft. Route all auxiliary to countermeasures. Deploy the Iron Guard. All of them. An aide stammered. All, sir? They've never been fully activated. I don't care. Wake them. Talek's fist slammed the console, his voice cracking. Sweat streaked his weathered face, betraying the terror beneath. He had seen war. He had commanded bombardments. Shattered sieges, reduced species to ash. But this was different. The scraps of footage had shown enough. The Terran unit shrugged off blasters, strode through shields, melted titanium with its hands. Where is the vengeance now? Mew asked quietly. Talek stared at his datapad. At last, a new display loaded. A red marker glowed inside the palace walls. 2 floors beneath us, he murmured. The Chancellor's throat tightened. It's hunting me, isn't it? His gaze lifted, unreadable. Not just revenge, a message. To who? To everyone. A shrill alarm cut him off. Then the artificial overseer trusted. Calm, unyielding spoke in halting tones. Unauthorized presence confirmed. Upper vault security breached. Threat level, maximum. Estimated survival, minimal. Outside the vault, the Iron Guard stood assembled 12. Titans of steel, crafted in the Empire's darkest foundries. No souls, no conscience, only kill routines. Born for war, for raising cities when diplomacy failed. Each cost more than a destroyer-class battleship. They were the Empire's final resort, and they were all pointed at the corridor where the Terran intruder would soon arrive. Inside the vault, the atmosphere was suffocating. The hum of power cycling into the defensive array made the floor vibrate. Mew stared at the door, arms trembling. How is this even happening? She whispered. They're supposed to be extinct. They adapted, Talek said. They always do. You remember. What Wessaid back then? The old saying during the war. Mew nodded slow. Door bent inward with a metallic groan. Not cut, not bypassed. Bent like something on the other side was pressing with enormous force. Another push. The wall cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. Screams echoed through the coms from distant floors. Guards abandoning posts. Officers begging for evacuation shuttles. Then suddenly the bending stopped. A new voice came through. Note over speakers. It was in her ear, her implant, the one only the High Common could access. You killed our world. Now we'll show you what a dead world can do. And then the palace AI lit up with an override command. SV Vengeance has initiated planetary blackout protocol. All power across Corvallis began to die. Shields, weapons, communications, and up in orbit, Asukan Terran ship decloaked. Above Corvallis Prime, space warped. For a few long silent seconds, it looked like a tear in reality. Stars bending around the disturbance light itself, hesitating before touching it. Then the cloak fell and the second Terran vessel emerged in full view. If the SV Vengeance was sleek and terrifying in its simplicity, this one was worse. It was jagged, scarred, almost stitched together like something rebuilt in desperation. Its hull bore no insignia, no name, just a long line of symbols scorched into the side like tally marks. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. The Imperial observation officers stared in disbelief as readings poured into their consoles. No registration, no interface, hull composition unknown. Mass displacement doesn't match physical size. How is it even flying? It's not flying, another officer muttered. It's drifting like it doesn't care about physics at all. What class is it? No one answered. The database had nothing. This ship wasn't just note recorded. It was deliberately built to be impossible. One of the officers whispered what they were all thinking. It's not a ship. It's a graveyard with engines. Back on the surface, in the darkness of the capital's vault, Chamber, Chancellor Mew, and General Talek were frozen as the last flickers of auxiliary power struggled to stay alive. Emergency lighting failed, communication links dropped, and Theon's invincible vault door now looked like paper against the storm knocking outside. Then the second message came, broadcasted system-wide on every device, every screen, every neural implant. Your empire is built on ash. We are the embers you left behind, and no burn. The second Terran ship opened its side panels. Not weapons, pods. Thousands of them. Small coffin-shaped vessels streaked across the sky, breaching the atmosphere like meteors. Some hit the oceans, others landed in forests, cities, and mountains. Each carried something. Some wonder, not anymore. Modified, hardened, built by pain, by time, by war. Men and women who had survived the annihilation of Earth and rebuilt in places the Empire never thought to look. Deep in abandoned systems, in artificial habitats, hiding in shadows of stars the Empire considered dead. They had waited a century, now they were here. Inside Thevo, the Chancellor clutched her head. The transmission was still ringing in her mind. They're going to tear you apart, General Talek paced, hand on his sidearm. We underestimated them, Wheelways did. We thought the Terran were fragile because they bled easy. We thought killing their world was the end. They were supposed to be extinct, she whispered. No, Talek said, turning to her with something dark in his eyes. They just went feral. The vault trembled again. This time not from an outside force, but from below. Shock waves traveled up Thefler. Explosions, the kind that meant surface breaches, suddenly. One of the backup screens sparked to life, flickering between static and a shaky drone feed. Neckenseller leaned in. One of the pods had landed just a few miles away. The video showed black figures spilling from the wreckage. Soldiers with no identifiable armor patterns, their weapons unlike anything seen in the current era. Not plasma, not rail. Something older, chemical-based, and devastating. The soldiers moved in coordinated silence, sweeping through streets and vaporizing anything in uniform. Not one of them spoke. Not one of them hesitated. Civilians weren't touched. Only military targets were torn apart. This isn't a strike, Talek said grimly. It's an extermination. Then something even more terrifying happened. One of the drones picked up an image of a Terran soldier pulling Asmal child from the rubble of a collapsed building. An Imperial child. The soldier knelt, spoke softly, gave the child water, shielded them from falling debris. Talek stared at the feed. Why? Why would they do that? Mew's voice cracked. Because we wouldn't. It wasn't. They understood. The Terran weren't just here to kill. They were here to remind the galaxy what the Empire had become. On the outskirts of Corvalisprim, as resistance crumbled and the night sky rained with falling pods, the people looked up and saw the impossible. Two ships, no origin, nor chords, and a symbol glowing in the dark sky etched in holographic fire above the city. We remember Earth. The streets of Corvallis Prime were no longer silent. They roared with the chaos of war. The kind of war the Empire hadn't seen in centuries. Not since the Jara campaign. Not since Earth. But this wasn't a battle between evenly matched forces. This was something else entirely. This was retribution. The Terran ground forces moved like they'd trained for this day, their whole lives. Maybe they had. Their armor was mismatched, scarred, modified beyond recognition. But what they lacked in uniformity, they made up for in purpose. Every step was precise. Every shot was personal. And they weren't just attacking military installations. They were targeting systems, power grids, comms, relays, broadcast towers. They were cutting the Empire's eyes and ears out of its own skull. General Talek watched the carnage from the last functioning tactical feed inside the vault. They're not here to conquer. They're here to erase us. He was right. All over the capital, Imperial soldiers fell back only to find they had nowhere left to retreat. Air support had been grounded. Drones refused to launch. The Terran ships were jamming protocols the Empire hadn't used in over 100 years. Archaic, brutal code that bypassed sleek AI firewalls like slicing through fabric. The Empire had gotten soft, comfortable, arrogant, and now they were being undonibi, the very people they once dismissed as savages. In the marketplace plaza, a squad of Imperial guards took cover behind a fountain, trying to hold back a group of Terran advancing from the east. Their leader, a young commander named Ree, shouted for reinforcements, but none came. His comm was dead. His HUD kept flashing in error. The Terran didn't speak. They didn't bark orders. They just moved, weaving through debris, firing only when needed, conserving energy like they'd done this 1,000 times before. One of them, taller than the others, walked right into enemy fire like it didn't matter, and it didn't. Ree hit him dead center with a plasma burst. Nothing. The figure kept walking. Received a rifle that looked handmade and fired once. Ree's second. In command, drop it instantly. One shot, no second chances. Panic set in. These weren't soldiers. They were something else. And then came the broadcast. Not a transmission, not a message, a memory. The Terran ships had hijacked the Empire's planetary signal arrays and were streaming historical data to every screen, every implant, every public board. Footage of Earth during the final days. Burning skies, dying oceans, children screaming under black clouds. Empire warships blotting out the sun as they fired radiation bombs across continents. And then the final message of Earth's planetary governor, before transmission was lost. To any Terran who finds this, they came in peace. They offered lies, we bent the knee. And they burned our planet. Anyway, if you're hearing this, make them remember. The people of Corvallis watched in horror. Some broke down, some screamed, some turned on their own commanders. Truth was a weapon, and the Terran were wielding it with as much precision as their rifles. Back in the vault, Mew collapsed into her seat, trembling. They're not just fighting us. They're shattering our history, our story, everything we built on their ashes. She couldn't finish. Talek stood at the door, weapon drawn, eyes locked on the final line of defense. Boom! Thavot's inner corridor shook, a blast louder than any before. The lights flickered one last time, then went dark completely. One of the guards whispered, "It's here." Then came the voice, "You buried the truth. We dug it up." Thavot. Door buckled again and again. Then it peeled backward, peeled like paper in a child's hands. Smoke and sparks filled the room. And through it, the Terran walked in. 9 feet tall, black armor burned and scorched. A weapon in one hand, a banner in the other. He planted the banner at the vault entrance. A simple flag, torn but unmistakable. Old Earth insignia, blue and white, forgotten, erased, now burning into Thefler of the Empire's heart. Talek raised his weapon. The Terran didn't flinch. "I was there," Talek growled. "I stood on the bridge when we ordered Yurskis burned. We did what we had to do." The Terran stepped forward. "So Willie." A single shot rang out. Talek dropped. Mew screamed, backing away, tears streaking down her face. "Please, I didn't know what they'd do to your world. I was young." The Terran turned. "Tower, weapon lowered. You don't get to die yet. You get to watch." Outside, the sky above Corvallis turned red, and the old voice echoed again across every system. "Earth was forgotten, but we never forgot you." The red sky stretched over Corvallisprem like a bleeding wound. From orbit, the 2 Terran vessels, SV Vengeance and the unnamed Juggernaut, hovered in synchronized ills. They weren't broadcasting anymore. They didn't need to. The massage had already sunk in. Across every major city on the begun descent, In every corner of the Empire, citizens were turning on their leaders. The feeds had reached the outer colonies, the midworld rings, even the distant moons of Azari Prime, where anti-Empire whispers had lived quietly for decades. Now those whispers had turned into roars. Massive protests erupted in Imperial-aligned systems, and across the interstellar net, a hashtag surged back to life, a phrase last seen during the Jara War. Earth was real. The Empire had buried Earth's story, rewritten it, told the galaxy they had to eliminate a dangerous species for peace. Told them the Terran destroyed themselves. Now the truth was seared into every screen, playing on loop, impossible to unsee. And across Thesters, something fractured. Whole battalions defected. Entire fleets turned off their transponders and went dark, unwilling to be the next to face those black Terran ships. Some rebels even tried to contact the Terran directly, begging to join them, to apologize, to fight the Empire from within. But the Terran didn't respond. They weren't here to form alliances. They were here to burn rot. Inside the ruined capital of Corvallis Prime, Chancellor Mew was marched through the hallways of her own palace by a Terran escort. Two of them flanked her, one male, one female, their faces hidden, but their silence screamed louder than anything. Her hands were bound, her face bruised, and everywhere she looked, she saw the consequences of her past. Scorch marks on walls, corpses of guards she'd trained, her marble statues shattered on the floor. The male Terran finally spoke as they entered what had once been the throne chamber. "You watched Earth die from this room, didn't you?" She said nothing. The Terran turned, grabbing her by the collar, lifting her off her feet like she weighed nothing. His visor reflected her terrified face. "We remember every second, every scream. You counted our deaths in your reports like they were data." He dropped her. She hit Theffler, coughing, gasping. "Why not kill me?" she croaked. "You've already taken the planet." The female Terran stepped forward, calm, voice flat. "You don't understand. We didn't come here to take your planet." She raised a small device and pressed it. A holographic projection flared to life above them. Images of theater colonies, the border worlds, the forgotten systems the Empire had drained and abandoned. And then flickering between them, uprisings, real-time footage. Cities turning on local governors, Imperial buildings set ablaze, soldiers tearing off uniforms, banners falling. Maru's eyes widened. "What have you done?" The female Terran leaned. In her voice, cold and steady. "We turned your truth against you. We didn't come to conquer. We come to infect." She turned toward the projection and pressed a second button. Now the screen showed an entirely different kind of horror. Terran colonies, dozens, hundreds, hidden, buried, functional. They weren't extinct. They'd thrived. Built civilizations on asteroids, harnessed energy from dead stars, mastered technology that bent the laws of physics. They hadn't just survived, they'd evolved. "You thought you ended us," the male Terran said, voice thick with rage barely contained. "All you did was push us underground long enough to become your reckoning." Then the doors of the throne room swung open, and the first wave of civilians entered. Corvallis Prime citizens, journalists, diplomats, refugees, all of them escorted by Terran, not prisoners, witnesses. Mutri Durais. "What is this?" The female Terran didn't look at her. "This is where your empire ends." The throne, her throne, was pulled from its foundation and shattered in front of everyone. A new seat was placed in its place, smaller, simpler. No gold, no jewels, just metal, scorched and sharp. One-off Terran sat down, not as ruler, as a reminder. Across the galaxy, people watched. Not just the fall of a capital, but the rise of a reckoning. And above it all, one final message from the SV Vengeance. You erased Earth, but Earth was never a place. Earth was a people, and we are everywhere now. The news of Corvallis Prime's fall spread faster than light, not because of official broadcasts, The Empire's network had collapsed hours ago, but because the Terran had seen to it that everyone saw it, they hijacked pirate relays, repurposed old rebel beacons, and used deep frequency pulses to send compressed signals across wormhole-linked systems. By dawn, if it could be called that, on any of the dim-lit colony worlds, every outer rim station, Fringa planet, and deep space trading port had seen it. The throne of the Empire shattering. The Chancellor of the Ascendancy on her knees, a Terran voice declaring, "We are everywhere now." It didn't matter what species you were. The message hit the same. The untouchable had been touched. The invincible had bled, but not everyone bowed. On Vakari's 4, a fortress world and one of the last loyalist strongholds in the mid-sector, Grand, Moff Kale stood watching the footage from inside his war bunker. Tall, pale, half his body replaced with cybernetics from a long-forgotten campaign. Kyle didn't flinch. He didn't rage, he smiled. Finally he muttered, "A worthy enemy returns." Behind him, his general shifted uneasily. "Sir, we just lost 3 border fleets to defection," one of them said. "Even our own AI clusters are hesitating to engage the Terran frequencies. Some are flagging them as cultural trauma triggers." Kyle turned. "Then purge the AI clusters." "But purge them," the general swallowed and obeyed. Kyle turned back to the screen, narrowing his eyes at the image of the SV Vengeance Cestal hovering above. Corvallis Prime. "They think this ends with a speech and a shattered chair number. This is the beginning." He tapped his wrist. A console opened, revealing a vault sequence long sealed. A protocol not even the High Council had dared use. Protocol Lazarus 9. An ancient contingency designed not to win, but to erase. They want to show us what they've become. Kyle said to himself, "Let's remind them what we buried deeper than Earth." Meanwhile, back on Corvallis Prim, the Terran were already planning their next move. The throne room had become a command hub, no longer a symbol of rule, but of reclamation. In its center, the surviving leaders of the Terran resurgence gathered. Officers, tacticians, survivors of Black Ops projects long considered dead. They spoke quietly, with precision, and without ego. "We've received signals from 8 more colonies asking for support," one of them reported. "Some are already tearing down their garrisons without a fight." Another added, "Vakari's 4 hasn't moved yet, but Kale's alive, and if anyone's capable of rallying what's left of the Loyalists, he'll try to make a final stand." The lead Terran strategist said, "No doubt. And he'll use the darkest parts of the Empire to do it." The room grew quiet. One figure leaned against the wall, arms crossed, smaller than Theater's, cloaked in a dusty gray coat with an old Terran patch on the sleeve. She spoke quietly. "We should have killed Kale a century ago." The lead strategist turned. "You knew him. I served with him before Earth burned, before he sold us out." They all looked at her now. She pulled the hood down. Scars traced her jaw. Her left eye glowed faint blue. A cybernetroplastin. "He was part of Project Winterborn. Same as me, only he got greedy, switched sides, helped them finish us off." She pointed to the glowing hollow map now showing Vakari's 4. "I'll lead the strike." Another Terran hesitated. "It's suicide." She didn't blink. "It's closure." The strategist nodded. Above them, the SV Vengeance began powering its core drive. Not for war, for travel, destination. Vakari's 4. But as they prepared to leave, something strange happened. The second Terran ship, the one with no name, the one that hadn't spoken, shifted position. Its hull glowed red for the first time, and from it another transmission flared. Not to Corvallis, not to the Terran, but to Kale. Somehow they knew. Deep within the icy chambers of Vakari's IVTH, Kyler received the message. He opened it in isolation. No encryption, no trickery, just a simple voice, familiar, human cold. "We remember you, Kale. We remember the children you locked in cryotubes, that we remember the weapons you tested on your own species. You survived Earth's fall, but Earth survived you. The message ended. Kyle stood still for a moment. Then he laughed. A hollow robotic sound. They think they can judge me? He said aloud. He opened the vault. Inside, rows of glass chambers hissed to life, each one containing something worse than death. Soldiers groan in silence, Bowapons, artificial minds created in the final hours of Earth, to fight the very thing the Empire feared most. Human rage. Kyle whispered. Let's see how wealthy remember hell. Space over Vakaris 4 was unnaturally still. No trade ships, no patrols, no civilian traffic. Just the oppressive silence of something ancient about to wake from orbit. The SV Vengeance drifted into low position, shadowing Thesi mountain range that crowned the planet's northern hemisphere. Its weapons were silent, its engines cold. But the presence of it, the weight could be felt across every comm line, every neural implant tuned to its signal. Inside the ship, Terran operatives made final checks. Most said nothing. What could they say? This wasn't just a mission. It was the last page of a 100-year-old nightmare. A chapter sealed in ash, finally about to be closed. In the strike room, she stood alone. The woman in gray, the one who had once served beside Coil, who had watched Earth burn and lived long enough to watch the Empire crawl from the ashes. Wearing a crown built on bones, her name had been erased long ago, but her designation remained, Wraith. 9. She loaded her weapon, an old kinetic rifle, polished but worn from years in exile. It had no smart systems, no auto-aim, no AI, just her hands, and the promise she made when the sky turned red over her home planet. I'll be the last thing. Hesses, the doors